Welcome back to my bio class. Today we will understand very important topic in the biology, that is diffusion and osmosis. Okay, let us first understand why we are studying diffusion and osmosis in bio class. Because these are the process by which anything can get inside the cell or come out of the cell. You know कि biology is the subject where we study about the living things, and we also know that living things are made up of cells. So whatever thing get inside the cell or come out of the cell is done by these two processes, that is diffusion and osmosis. And there is one more process by which the substance get inside the cell is active transport, that we will do in our next class. So let us first understand. I hope you know the meaning of diffusion because we have studied diffusion in chemistry and in physics also. So basically you need to understand that diffusion and osmosis both are what? Both are movement. What is this? These are movement. Diffusion is movement and osmosis is also movement. Movement of what? The movement of any substance or particles. It is a movement of substance or a particles. Okay. Now we should know that movement takes place from where to where. In case of diffusion, movement takes place from the place where it is present in more quantity to the place where it is present in a lesser quantity. So coming to the definition, how we will define diffusion? How to define diffusion? So diffusion is the movement of the substance from a region of its higher concentration to the region of its lower concentration. Okay. So it is the movement from the region of its higher concentration to the region of its lower concentration. In simple terms, you understand from where it is present in a larger quantity to the place where it is present in the lesser quantity. So this is the definition of diffusion. We can understand that this movement is from the direction is from the higher concentration region to the lower concentration region, and movement of what? Movement of any substance. Okay. So actually this diffusion takes place where? In the cell. So we see oxygen from lungs to blood capillaries. You know that when we do inhalation and exhalation, oxygen is taken in and carbon dioxide is given out. But this taking in of oxygen and giving out of carbon dioxide is done at the cellular level, and that is done by the process of diffusion. Okay. Oxygen from lungs. Okay. Since when we inhale, there is more oxygen in lungs compared to the blood capillary. That's why oxygen diffuses from lungs to the blood capillaries. Is it clear? Next, oxygen from the stomata of leaf to air spaces. This is also another example of diffusion. When it takes place during photosynthesis. Okay. Now we should know that photosynthesis is the process by which plant make their own food, and during photosynthesis oxygen come out as a byproduct. So inside leaf where photosynthesis is going on, oxygen concentration is more compared to the oxygen concentration outside the leaf, that is air. That is why the oxygen from the leaf moves out into the air spaces, and it is done by which process? So it is done by diffusion. I hope it is clear. So concluding, how we can conclude diffusion? Only you need to know that it is a movement of substance from higher concentration to lower concentration region. Okay. Now coming to osmosis. As I have already explained you, osmosis is also a movement. But here the difference with the diffusion is that osmosis is the movement of water. Osmosis is the movement of water. So the movement of water from the region of its higher concentration to the region of its lower concentration. So this is the definition of osmosis. And what is the difference with diffusion? Osmosis is only talking about water movement, nothing else. And diffusion is movement of everything. Another thing which is very important in osmosis is that we can consider osmosis is going on only when movement takes place through partially permeable movement. Okay, takes place through partially permeable membrane. So osmosis is osmosis only when the movement of water takes place from the region of its higher concentration to the region of its lower concentration through partially permeable membrane. Okay, so partially permeable membrane is what? It is the membrane, same membrane of which our cell is made up of. Okay, the cell membrane is partially permeable membrane. Okay, so the osmosis is that movement of water from the region of its high concentration to the region of its lower concentration when it passes through partially permeable membrane. So what I am trying to explain you, okay, if movement of water is taking place from the region of its higher concentration to the region of its lower concentration, but it is not passing partially permeable membrane, then it is not osmosis, it is diffusion. Okay, so in order to understand diffusion, we must understand that the water must pass partially permeable membrane. So this is the difference of osmosis with diffusion. Okay, what is the similarity of osmosis and diffusion? They both are the movement. That is the only similarity. What is the difference? Osmosis is especially the movement of water only, and only when the water passes through the partially permeable membrane. Okay, so you see this, more water, movement is taking place from more water to less water, but through partially permeable membrane. Okay, now example of osmosis is what? Example of osmosis is when there are many live example of osmosis, but let us understand the roots, when it takes water from the soil, it is done by the process of osmosis. Okay, so this is done by the process of osmosis. So this is the difference and similarity of diffusion and osmosis. Okay, now let us continue our osmosis. Okay, in this class we will understand what will happen to the cell, plant cell, when it is kept in different concentrated solution. So what type of osmosis will take place? Okay, as we have already understood, movement of water is osmosis when it is passing through the partially permeable membrane. So, and we know that cells have partially permeable membrane, so we are discussing osmosis here. Let us understand this concept with the help of experiment. Take two same type of cell and kept in a two different solution. Solution A is concentrated solution and solution B is dilute solution. Okay, now in concentrated solution, after some time when we will take out the cell, we see that cell is shrinked. The cell is shrinked, whereas in a dilute solution, when we check the cell, taking out of the cell from the solution, and we check, the cell is expanded. Okay, now let us understand why this happens. This happens because in concentrated solution, the name itself, concentrated, means there is less water. So there is less water in the solution compared to water in the cell. So what will happen? The osmosis will take place from cell to the solution. Yani, the water will move from the cell to the solution because water inside the cell is more compared to water in the solution. And this type of osmosis is called exoosmosis. Of course, when water will come out of the cell will get dehydrated and they become shrinked. And this shrink condition is called flaccid condition. Is it clear? Now, what will happen in a dilute solution? Opposite will happen in a dilute solution. Since the dilute solution means more water in the solution compared to water in the cell. So what will happen? The water will move from the solution into the cell. And this type of osmosis is called endoosmosis. Okay, so water will move into the cell. Of course, when water will move into the cell will expand due to more water, and this expanded condition of the cell is called turgid condition. Is it clear? So this, we can see the endo-osmosis, we can easily see this endo-osmosis in our home, where you have seen the chickpea, the dried chickpea. So when we need to use this dried chickpea, we have to soak this dried chickpea in a water. So when we soak the chickpea in a water, what happens? Since the chickpea, we consider them as a, now we just understand that chickpea is a cell. So what will happen? In this chickpea, there is less water compared to water outside the chickpea. So what will happen? The water will get inside the chickpea and the chickpea become expanded. They become, when it is soaked in water, they become expanded. And this we can just correlate with the endo-osmosis, because the water outside is more compared to water in the chickpea. That's why the water is moving inside the chickpea. Same thing is happening in this cell. So cell, when there is less water inside the cell compared to water outside in the solution, so water will move into the cell, and that is why cell become expanded. And this expanded condition of cell is called turgid condition.